Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dogs and Hogs with Russ Tanner. My name is Roddy Nabulsi. I will be your co-host for the next few minutes as we talk to Russ Tanner, the former Georgia Bulldogs offensive lineman, and we got some offensive lineman stuff to talk about. We got a lot of other stuff to talk about as the Bulldogs are back to practicing. They started last Thursday. I think they're off today because I don't think you can go 7 straight days or something. There's got to be a rest period in there or something.
Dumb rules. Dumb rules.
Yeah, dumb rule. So I think they're off today. The Dogs are. It's hot. They were out there. You see some guys just pouring sweat. It's not the two. You went through real 2-a-days, didn't you, Russ?
Yeah, I found that every generation of football player looks back at the kids younger than them and talks about how much easier they had it. So the older guys than us were kills because we would go 2-a-days, 1-a-day, 2-a-days, 1-a-day. So we wouldn't have back-to-back 2-a-days. Maybe our first year we did, but they kind of even started phasing that out. But, if you talk back to the guys that played, in the 80s and early 90s and even before that, they would tell you 2 and 3 times a day for 2 weeks in a row, full of pads every time. So, yeah, we had true 2-a-days back when Coach Rick first got there. But over time, that's been phased out more and more. And as much as we like to talk about the wussification of America with football, it's probably a good thing. The body can only take so much pounding.
True, but also you had – so technically they reported last Wednesday. So it was like, hey, July 31st, you report to camp. August 1st is the first day of camp. And I say technically they reported, but as far as I know, there wasn't anybody who wasn't already here. And, they get the 8 hours of instruction during the summer. So those guys are still here. They're still doing lifts. Yeah. And, back in the old days, you did report. We were I covered guys that, hey, what's this guy doing? Well, he's at home with his coach or he's home with his trainer working this summer. It wasn't everybody stayed in Athens. And, some guys went home to work. They had to have a job.
Literal jobs, yeah.
Yeah, so now your job is football 24/7 and even, okay, hey, mid-April, you play a G-Day. Well, that rolls up. You go home for a couple of days and come back and, hey, we got to lift Monday morning. Tuesday, we got to run. Thursday, we got another lift. It doesn't stop. So there weren't any fat guys that needed double, 2-a-day.
No.
When we went out there Thursday. That team looks like a bunch of damn killers.
Look,
it's unreal.
Look, there's a lot to talk about in that little bit right there. But, yeah, if you look at the amount of hours these kids put in now compared to what they did 30 years ago, they're putting in more hours of football year-round, and it's not even close. I mean, it's not even close. And now with the whole thing about the NCAA relaxing the number of coaches that a team can have and on-the-field stuff, there's so much more instruction that goes on now. It's ridiculous. You think we didn't used to try to figure out how to go hide behind the shed during the summer workouts when the coach was not supposed to be watching? We did that all the time. Sorry, my phone. I don't know how to make my phone not buzz. So that stuff happens. Now, on to the stuff about guys being in shape, which leads you to the thing about these guys are in such better shape year-round. We would have fat guys every year, late July, August would come back. And that's just not the case anymore. Look, I was able to go to practice recently over the last week or so with some buddies. Went out there and watched them. Some Letterman got to watch some football. It is unbelievable. I mean, it is unbelievable the mass that these dudes carry around. And I'm not just talking about the big guys, because we had some big guys that play with us. You'd have Max Gene Gillis. You'd have George Foster, Daniel Inman. I mean, you had some big jokers. But now it's every single one of them, and they're enormous. Michael Williams looks like a freak show. I mean, he doesn't look he's not normal. He doesn't look like a person. I mean, he's just the way he's cut, the way he's built. And even the guys that you think are smaller guys, DBs, some of the receivers, linebackers. Colby Young, the wide receiver guy out of Miami. I know you guys have seen some of your a little bit of early practice y'all get to go to. Like, they're just specimens. They are huge, in shape, nimble-footed, swift athletes, and that is scary. So it's really crazy what Kirby and that staff have done.
Yeah, remember when they were trying to get Scott Cochran to come over, and he stayed at Alabama, and everyone's like, we one-upped you there, and you got to go get this, this other, weight room guy, And I'm like, okay, let's see what Georgia does. And they go out and get one of the best weight room guys in the nation, and to your point, it's not just the big guys, and it's even the freshmen. there are two freshman outside linebackers who just look like monsters. Quintavious Johnson, keep that name in mind, wearing 33. Then Joseph Jonia Ajonye, he had 99. So 33 and 99.
Yep.
Look for those two numbers because you're going to see those guys. And I'm like, freshmen? They look like rookies.
Yeah. If they can figure it out, if they can figure it out scheme wise, they're going to play. I mean, they're just too good physically.
Yeah. I mean, it's nuts. But then when you look at what Sinclair did, at one point, Hot Rod walks out, glasses wearing, soccer playing, Rod Blankenship.
Yep.
Rodrigo, he was cut. He was just, that nerd was roped.
Yeah.
You can't be the skill guy hiding in the corner nowadays.
Yep.
I mean, top to bottom, Joseph Aguero, Jonel Aguero.
Jonel Aguero, look, we can do this a little bit tonight, by the way, and I think it's a good idea because you've seen a little bit of practice. I've seen a little bit of practice. And, we all get bits and pieces of what we hear and things we expect. Jonel Aguero is going to be a player. And if I'm mispronouncing that dude's name, I apologize to him because he is a
Mr.
dude.
is fine.
Mr. Aguero. Like, he looks – he is kind of that – you think about that hybrid sort of safety, linebacker, that kind of, I guess Georgia calls it star position player a lot. There's going to be a run support guy, but it'll drop in coverage. I mean, he is that guy when you just look at the body type for Georgia. And when you watch on that safety position specifically, you watch Malachi Starks, we know who he is. I mean, he is a stud. KJ Bolden is different. KJ Bolden moves differently than other people. Ellis Robinson does too, by the way, as far as two freshmen that really stand out. But KJ Bolden looks great. And then you start looking at some of your depth guys on there. You got guys like Dan Jackson, Jake Pope, who, are they going to be top end NFL draft picks? Probably not. Are they going to be guys that you can plug in and feel really confident that you know what you're going to do at all times? Absolutely. So you got 5 or 6 safeties that go in that you feel good about. And you got 2 or 3 that are Malachi Starks and KJ Bolden that have first-round talent playing safety for you. So, yeah, those guys, they look great. Jonel Aguero, he's built differently. He's not one of these long, slender, run 80 yards downfield, hip for hip with a receiver out wide guys. He's a guy that's going to bust people in the mouth playing safety, and I love seeing him. What's our outside linebacker? Damon Wilson.
Damon Wilson, Dave Harris, Sam Mpemba.
Damon Wilson is a guy that I would keep my eyes on as a Georgia fan this year. I think he's wearing number 10 now, if I'm not mistaken. When you see some of the roster stuff they put out or been around,
that's him right there on the screen.
He looks good. He moves good. His first step is explosive. And then we've got to make sure we talk about Roddy. I don't think that a lot of our people understood with the Jazeer. I'm going to pronounce his name. The 6'10" dude from Florida. Jazeer Jackson. Have you seen this human being?
Yes. Hey, well, let's not switch to offense yet. Because actually on the screen, right? If you're listening to the podcast of this, you're missing. I got some of these guys on the screen here, and I want to go through a couple of them. A, because I got to take pictures of them. B, just to reiterate what you said. Here's Mykel Williams. I mean, he's got a cast on his left hand there. That is not a normal human being. His arms are thicker than my big fat legs. But I mean, you see him at an NFL minicamp, you're like, well, yeah, he's supposed to be here.
All right, just for the record, I can't see nothing on the screen. The screen's black on my end. So if our viewers are getting it too, you may have given us a black screen up there. It may just be me though, which is very possible.
Okay. No, yeah, that's blocked out. But for some of our other guys, I can't see it. Some can see it, some can't. So we won't. Okay. So anyway,
keep talking about these guys.
You look at Aguero. You look at Kyron Jones, Malachi Starks. We had a great story about Malachi Starks and what he was doing from the Jerez Robinson. This secondary could be better than it was last year, despite the fact that you lost Kamari Lassiter and Tyke Smith.
Javon Bullard.
you lose 3 of your best defensive backs, and they could be better. Now they're going to be younger. They're going to be, but when you look at and you see Daniel Harris back there, you're like, ooh, that guy can fly. Look at him spin. Look at those hips. And then you're like, okay, well, you know that Julian Humphrey is one of the fastest guys out there. Dalen Everett, who a lot of people picked on last year. Well, you won't have Dalen Everett to kick around this year because he started all those games last year. And I go back to the Florida years when they had Jalen Ramsey and they had two true freshmen running their cornerback spots. And those guys got burned for a year. Then for like 2 more years, 2.5 years, you could not throw against Florida because those guys they locked it down.
Yeah.
So you got Dalen Everett with the experience. You got Julian Humphrey and Daniel Harrison on one side. It's 1A and 1B. And then you got the number 1 cornerback, the 5-star Ellis Robinson there, maybe backing up Everett, learning from him. You got 4 defensive backs. 4 cornerbacks. And then, well, the big question, what about Star? You put Aguero there. He's nuts. You put Jones behind him. Maybe KJ Bolden comes up, plays that spot. You got KJ backing him up at safety. It's like, wait, the secondary is not supposed to get better when you lose 3 draft picks. That's not how it's supposed to work. But, okay, worst case, it's a step down, but barely. What we didn't see last year is the outside linebackers. Where's that edge guy? Where's the sack guy? Where's the guy, giving those tackles grief? And it's not to take a shot at some of the guys that played there last year. But the potential, like you said, Michael Williams was working outside linebacker. Damon Wilson, you called him out. I'm going to write it down. Russ Tanner picked Damon Wilson to be a breakout player, on August 7th, so
write it down, book it.
We got it down. But again, and those 2 true freshmen, but it was the Sam Mpemba, Damon Wilson, Gabe Harris trio that came in last year. 2 of those guys are 5-stars.
Yep.
Then you got JJ, another 5-star. Quintavious Johnson, very underrated, one of the best athletes I've ever seen in person. This is going to be a filthy class, ridiculous inside linebackers. And you look at those inside linebackers, you're like, there's looking like a bunch of monsters as well. Chris Cole is a true freshman out there. He looks like one of the best I've ever seen. 2 years into his career, but he's not even a full week into his career. So the defense is, I guess a lot of people have more questions about the defense. Now, the defensive line, like you said, aren't any fat guys out there, but there ain't a lot of depth. There are a lot of bodies, but there ain't a lot of depth, and there aren't any guys you go, okay, he's
the dude.
Boku, you were obviously a zero technique. You were going to have a Jordan Davis style year. You're going to be a Devontae Wyatt. We don't know that. We don't know that Jordan Hall's banged up. Warren Brinson's got issues. Nazir Stackhouse is out there working, but it's just not. The only weakness I can see right now is an inexperienced defensive front. Even though you have a couple older guys coming back, some of those older guys are banged up. So how does that translate before we move to offense?
Yeah,
body wise, you'd face them. You looked at them. What did you see?
Well, back to the secondary for a second, and I'll jump to the D-line stuff. I think when you talk about is that secondary more talented than last year, I think it's a no question. Yes, they are more talented. I think the thing you don't know there is you're losing 2 guys in Javon Bullard and Kamari Lassiter who were absolute dogs for you. They were the guys when it was nut cutting time. Like they were the ones who were cutting the nuts. You knew they were. They just weren't afraid to stick it in there at any point in time. There wasn't a moment that was too big for them, and they were leaders for you there. Now, talent goes a long way. You got Malachi Starks back there. You got your other guys you mentioned that are experienced. So I feel like they're going to be fine because they're definitely crazy talented in the secondary. It's just going to be a matter of if you can get through the early part of the season with your lumps for the young guys and make it through, you're in great shape. Moving our way up, that kind of linebacker position stuff. You've got some guys now. We talked about Michael Williams, Damon Wilson on the outside. CJ Allen on the inside looks like to be the next dude. And then you've got that other run of all these highly rated guys that have a shot to be great for Georgia. So you feel good about the depth inside linebacker. Again, you just say, who's the other guy? Is it Smile Monday to see the guy that steps up as a senior type person? I don't know. But you've got bodies there you feel good about. The biggest question, this is what me and those guys, when I went to practice last week just watching, the biggest question we had was about the D-line. And it's exactly what you said. You got a lot of bodies for the D-line, and they all look very similar, by the way. They're enormous human beings. They're big, thick trunks, powerful guys, and they move well. But so far, there's not one person out of that group that stood out to be that next. Let's forget Jalen Carter
Who
and
gets
Jordan.
drafted out of that group right now?
That's exactly where I'm going with this. Like, and I think you can throw Jalen Carter out. Jalen Carter is probably going to go as probably a top 2 or 3 defensive tackle in the history of the University of Georgia, as far as how good he was. Jordan Davis was so different physically that he was different. But you think about who's the next Devontae White. I think that's a great look. And by the way, Devontae White, where was he drafted? By the way, he was a first round pick. So I mean, that's obviously unbelievable. And you just don't know. Are there guys talented enough there to do it? Yes. Is it going to be Jordan Davis? Is it going to be Nazir Stackhouse? Is Warren Brinson going to be the unquestioned leader that kind of steps out, that separates himself from the pack? I don't know. And when guys are banged up early, it just doesn't make you feel great going into the season. The McLeod kid, Xavier McLeod, the guy that came from South Carolina that transferred in, he's a huge individual and he moves really well. So he's the guy when I just watched him, just straight eyeball test watching him out there, because I didn't see anything in pads. I didn't see anybody, bang shangalanging out there and seeing what you're really made out of. But just going through drills, the way they move, Xavier McLeod to me may be that guy out of the group. So if I had to pick one out of the group, because I don't know a lot about them. I mean, I know I've seen Warren Brinson, I've seen Nazir Stackhouse. After those 2 guys, if you're a Georgia fan, who else can you confidently say what type of player they are on that defense line? There's not many of them.
There's not. I mean, I think Jordan Hall could be special, but he's on the sideline right now. Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, we've seen flashes from him. This is a guy who's supposed to be in that, that talk. I didn't know that Warren Brinson was as good as he was, but if you talk to Trey Scott says, look, we're lucky to keep him from going to the NFL.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see that. But I'm gonna put my if I had to pick somebody on that defensive front, I'm gonna go with number 52, Christian Miller.
Okay.
Just for the speed rush he has. He should not be that fast for that size.
Yeah.
And again, I know that's not his job. As an offensive lineman, defensive lineman's job is not always to get to the quarterback, but turn him loose sometimes, if you're on that Jaguar package with those guys standing up on 3rd down, and sometimes you need that down lineman who's going to make life hell for a offensive lineman, because he's coming. He's not just trying to take up a gap. He's not trying to take on a double. He's trying to get past you. Put in 52. Put in Christian.
And body type wise, it makes sense what you're saying, because he is a little bit longer and leaner than some of those other guys that are just absolute run stuff and type guys. So maybe he's the guy they need, because I feel like it's going to be a hard job for people to run on Georgia's defense this year because of the type of bodies they have on the D line. But like you said, what happens when you got to get after it in a 2-minute drill situation? You got to get after the quarterback. Maybe Christian Miller's that guy. We need somebody to be that guy, because it's been a separator for Georgia the last few years. We haven't had great edge pressure from the defensive front. Those inside guys have gotten enough push to make it hard for them, especially with Jalen Carter and those cats in there. So you need that. But I don't think there's any question when it comes to the biggest question mark on this team that it's the defensive line, the interior defensive line specifically for Georgia. So, Trey Scott has proven himself to be more than an adequate coach. He develops the crap out of guys. He motivates them. He recruits well. And you hope that it translates like so many other positions have. And Georgia has historically done it. Like, history tells us Georgia's going to be good on the defensive line. Just going into the season, we can't pick that guy out that's going to be the guy. So,
you're right. And sometimes having that really good edge guy opens it up in the middle, So that you got to deal with it. I guess, which one of those guys is your Jonathan Ledbetter? Which of those edge guys is your Azeez Ojulari? Which one of those is an Adam Anderson? Which one of them is a Leonard Floyd? Who's the Jarvis Jones out there? It's been a while since Georgia could count on a sack. Hey, it's 3rd and 8, final 2 minutes. If you stop them here, they punt to you. You've got a lead. You win the game, and you got to have that guy coming off the edge. Jarvis Jones single-handedly won a couple Missouri games for you. Leonard Floyd beats LSU. Azeez Ojulari comes out there and just kills everybody. Who is that guy? Your guys on the inside who, they stack and peak and they just disrupt the whole thing. I say all that to say this. When you go to practice and you hear Kirby Smart jumping on one guy and he picks somebody to just call out every 15 minutes.
It usually tells you something.
And it does tell you something. I noticed it year 1 or year 2. It was Richard LeCount. I thought Kirby Smart hated Richard LeCounte. I'm like, this is a guy who, switched schools for you, dropped what I think he was going to go to Alabama. He becomes a Georgia Bulldog. He and Jake Fromm go out and recruit your entire class for you. And dude, you were so mean to him. Because I'm like, you got 84 other people here you can yell at, but you pick on Richard LeCounte all the time. And that's because you expected big things from him. So going by the Kirby Smart yelling at profile, Jamal Jarrett, big job. if attention for Kirby Smart equals payout down the road, Jamal Jarrett should be that. He should be a first round pick at some point.
So I read some of the notes on the my best way of show prep, by the way, is going and reading the dog rep, because there's a lot of great stuff on there, especially guys that get to watch practice and all that. And I think the comment I saw was along those lines. And I think you wrote it, which is why obviously you know to talk about it. It was like Jamal Jarrett and Daniel Harris. If those are the two guys, if Kirby's butts you, it means you're going to be a dude. Like, those guys are probably going to be All-American, because they seem to have been catching it so far this year. So, yeah, I mean, those are two guys that are super talented. Jamal Jarrett is a huge, like all of them, they're all huge. Like, I don't think we've been watching the Olympics at our house. Do you watch the Olympics?
Oh, yeah.
Dude, they're freak shows, right? And we like to talk about all these different places in the Olympics and try to figure out, like, which Olympic sport we could play. And I don't think we realize it. I was watching the indoor men's volleyball game a while ago with USA and Poland. Poland beat us, which stunk. But I could play volleyball. Those dudes are 6'9" and jump out of the gym. So you get a little bit confused when you look at the defensive lineman for Georgia, and you start to think, well, who is this guy? Jamal Jarrett? He's nobody. How big is he? And all of a sudden you look and, okay, how big is this guy? Oh, he's 6'6", 325. Whatever they are. I mean, they're the physical stature of these defense linemen is crazy. And when Kirby sees something, if it's a Jamal Jarrett, if it's a Christian Miller, whoever it is, if it's a Warren Brinson, if they see something and figure out as a coach how to get it out of them, that's when you find the special players. So, hopefully we get that on the D-line this year, because Jamal Jarrett needs to be that guy. Jordan Hall needs to be that guy. Warren Brinson needs to be that guy. Nazir Stackhouse needs to be that guy. If Georgia's going to win another national championship, the defense line has to be great.
I mean, it should take a little bit of the pressure off of them, because if you can play man as well as they do, that, and free up those inside linebackers, it's going to be a nasty defense to run against. I'm apparently, when you said Olympics, I'm like, when does Noah Lyles run the 200? Is it tonight? I don't want to miss the 200. And then we saw Quincy Hall just doing a crazy win in the 400.
Yeah.
With nuts. And of course, the 1500 was off the chain. Now, I can't remember the name of, it's driving me crazy, the 3-time Olympic gold shot putter.
Oh, Ryan Krauser.
That is my new hero. I threw shot once, and for a few years, and I try to explain to people, like you said, for size, for when you don't understand it.
Right.
And basically take the heaviest bowling ball you can find in the at your local bowling alley, 16-pound ball, stand on the free throw line, turn around and put it through the basket on the other end of the other end of the court. That's what Krauser's doing. That's what these athletes are beyond comprehension. That's what happens when you walk down, you go look at Georgia's offense, you see, Colby Young. A lot of people talk about Colby Young in the comment section there. You see number 8, you're like, wait, that's a 35-year-old man. That's not a
he's a grown-up
20-year-old kid. And then you see Jazir Jackson, 6'10", 345 pounds. Again, this was a guy who was apparently standing next to Amarius Mims and made Amarius Mims look small. Mims, the biggest kid we've ever covered.
Yeah.
And he's, an inch or two taller than him, got the weight for him. Never played high school football, but you got Stacey Searles over there can teach him some stuff. So also Jared Wilson, maybe the fastest player on the team. People don't understand that. I say one of the fastest pound for pound.
Right.
You got an offensive tackle offensive center who's maybe one of the best athletes on the team. This guy can do a lot. But when you look at how fast he can run for how big he is, that's mind blowing. And he's kind of banged up right now. He wasn't practicing, but they put Tate Ratledge. So you take a first team all SEC guy and you move him to center. and you don't miss a beat. That's, I mean, not saying that's how it's going to be, but I want your thoughts on the offensive line, because you see Jazir Jackson, 6'10", and you see Bo Hewley and Daniel Calhoun and Ernest Green and Micah Morrison. Talk to me about this offensive line and the idea you switched about, can Tate Ratledge play center? What does he need to learn to do it?
Yep. All right. We'll try to come back to Tate, because I want to talk about that, because I love Tate Ratledge. Jazir Jackson, you talk about him. Tell you how dumb I am. I wasn't paying attention to recruiting like I should over the summer. And I thought Jazir Jackson was a guy like an IMG playing basketball this year that would be in next year's class. When I went to practice last week, I was out there with some buddies. I was like, who is that cat? They're like, oh, that's that 6'10" basketball player. And I don't know if people know this. Maybe some fans are smarter than me. I'm sure they are. But he's on the team right now. He's playing, dressing out like 64, 65, whatever number he was. When you see him, he stands out immediately amongst giants as the biggest giant. And he moves really, really well. Now, is he going to be an impact player for you this year? Probably not. You got to have a lot of technique to be able to play the position he's playing. But just watching him, the comment I saw back on like the Vault, for those who don't know, on UJ Sports, kind of the recruiting message board called the Vault, somebody, one of the posers who knows, said, in the know about these types of guys, said Jazir Jackson's the type of player that's either going to be a bust that never plays a play at Georgia, never plays down at Georgia, or he's going to be a first-round pick. After watching him on the field and seeing his body, seeing how he moves, I would lean towards first-round pick, because, and I'm not saying he's a great football player yet, but there aren't many human beings on the planet that are built like he's built that can move like he moves. I mean, he's a great-looking offensive lineman. You cannot draw a tackle up to be looking better than he does. So he's just enormous. You didn't get down to, like you're talking about now, about Tate playing center. We're going to come back to what that's like to get that transition. But I think one of the challenges for Georgia is figuring out how you get your best 5 offensive linemen on the field at all times. And Jared Wilson, by all accounts, has done a really good job for him. I mean, he's been the guy that's worked hard, that's been a leader, great athlete, et cetera. But he doesn't have a ton of reps right now because he's been behind a center that never missed a snap in Van Pran Granger, basically. But Jared Wilson's played some. But when you look at Georgia's strength on the offensive line, you probably have 3 of the best guards in the country in Dylan Fairchild, Micah Morris, and Tate Ratledge. Like, those 3 guys are NFL players, and there's 3 of them for 2 positions. It's going to be hard to keep all 3 of them not on the field at the same time as the year goes on. I've heard people saying that Micah Morris may get a few reps at tackle, probably right tackle over there with Truss a little bit. I've heard, obviously, Tate Ratledge is getting some reps at center on there. Now, Jared Wilson will play, and he'll play a ton, assuming he's healthy. But you're going to see them, especially early on, kind of shuffle those pieces around and figure out the 5 they need so that when it's go time, that's who they put on the field. Because the reality for Georgia is they're going to win the majority of their games. They're going to win most of their games fairly easily this year. They're just that much better than the majority of teams they play. But there are 3 or 4 games that are going to be absolute dogfights with the schedule we have at Alabama, at Texas, at Ole Miss, Clemson to start the season. There's 4 or 5 games that are tough. So what Georgia's going to try to figure out is how you get your best 5 on the field when you got to have it, when you got to have a drive, when you got to kill a game, when you got to get a first down, when you got to score. Who are those 5 going to be? And I don't think we know that right now. I lean towards thinking Tate playing center is probably where they're going to end up, because Fairchild and Micah Morris have been so good at guard. How do you keep those guys off the field? And that's not a knock on Jared Wilson.
Exactly.
The chances are Jared Wilson, even if that was to happen, he'll probably be a full-time starting leader again next year and an NFL draft pick. But experience is a great weapon on the offensive line. Tate playing center. He talked about this some. I saw some. I guess somebody interviewed him the other day. Maybe he was available to the media, whatever it was. But he was just talking about just trying to learn your steps and your sets at center versus guard. Because it's just a different. That. Yeah, it's different footwork, different hands. So at center, you are this far apart from the guy. Like, literally, you can smell what he ate for a pregame meal. Oh, are those Doritos? Did y'all eat Doritos? Like, you can pick that out, right? Yeah. And all of a sudden, like, your hands, when you snap the ball, you snap and your hand has to come immediately, because there's no space between you and him. Whoever gets their hand on the other guy first at center typically wins between the center and the nose. And there's no sitting back. Usually you're right on the guy. Run blocking, you're right on the guy. Whereas guard, you're back, right? You're back this far behind the center. Their feet are back farther. So they're setting in their pass where they're coming back, shoulders are up, and they're waiting with their hands being patient. And it's really just a timing deal about when do you fire your hands to get it on that guy that you're blocking. And then obviously understanding assignment, but assignment isn't that big of a deal for a veteran guy because the center guards work together on all the stuff. So the guard knows what the center's doing, center knows what the guard's doing. That's not the end of the world. It's really more of the minutia of the technique about how you get your hands and your feet in the right position. But Tate's a pro. It ain't like they just put him at center last week. I was like, oh, Jared Wilson got a sprained ankle. Tate, let's see if you can snap. Like, that's not what's happened. I mean, he's gotten plenty of reps, plenty of practice, knows what to do. And, I feel good about it. I mean, those other guys, Dylan Fairchild did not get kind of the love of some of these other guys because he's just not the big monster. But if you look at him, like, how big is Dylan Fairchild? 6'5", 305, 310. And he's just a wrestler that kills people. So I don't see how you keep those three off the field at the same time.
Yeah, that was my whole thing when I was looking at it. Dylan Fairchild, 6'5", 315. State champion wrestler. I bring that up every time because give me a wrestler in the trenches. I'll take it. They know hand fighting. They know leverage. They know how to move. I would want all my wrestlers either playing basketball or wrestling. And ideally they could be both, just for the cardio and for the movement. Micah Morris could transfer anywhere and start. Any team in the nation. Dylan Fairchild. And again, when I say any team, I'm talking about the Texas and the Oregons and the Alabamas. I don't care how good you are. That guy's going to come on because look at what he's trying to beat out at Georgia. You got an all SEC right guard, and those two guys are really good. Like I said, it's 3 ridiculous guards, 2 spots. And now all of a sudden you line them up side by side by side.
Yep.
That's just – and as much as I'm excited about Jared Wilson, I'm like, once we heard that might be even just the slightest possibility. And again, I did the same thing for years where I thought if your right tackle goes down, the number 2 right tackle goes in. Your left guard goes down, the left guard, the number 2 goes in. And I never quite understood. I'm like, wait, that guy's the backup right tackle. Why is he going in at left guard? And it's like, hey, he's number 6.
Mm-hmm.
It's not 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 across the line. It's 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. And I'm like, oh. And I mean, hell, I've been covering the team it was a nil to Mark Richt era before I understood it. Because in high school that's how we played. If one guy went down, your backup
right.
there.
But they're all cross trained.
Yeah,
every single player there's cross trained. Tate Ratledge could probably play any position on offensive line if he had to, and feel good about it and be a very good player for you. Obviously, the interior is where he's most comfortable and most effective. You talk about Micah Morris. We were watching him out there, like, golly, Micah Morris getting some reps at tackle? Is he really going to play some tackle this year? Somebody told us that, and we were looking at him, and my buddy's like, Micah Morris isn't even that big. Roddy, please look at your notes right there to your left. Tell us how big Micah Morris is.
Micah Morris is, I don't want to guess. He is 6'4", 330 pounds.
6'4", 330 pounds.
That is half of 1% of the people in America are that size.
Like, put that dude at right tackle and watch him work. He'll move people. So,
I will laugh in Jamari Sawyer.
Yeah. Yeah. Jamari Sawyer is going to have one of the longest NFL careers of anybody out of Georgia recently. And he's a 6'4", 6'3" left tackle, but his feet are great and his hands are great. But
I was told he had some of the best hand fighting of anybody.
Yeah,
that has come through, because you remember how good Andrew Thomas was. Like, Andrew's got the best feet, he's got the best hips. I mean, you saw that guy just hover across the ground. His shoulders didn't even move up and down when he did his kick slide and stuff. And then all of a sudden, it's like, here comes Jamari Sawyer, and they're like you just can't get a hand on him.
Yep. And if you do, by the way, he's such an enormous human being. You're not going through him. You're not running through that dude's chest and knocking him backwards. So it's gonna be fun to watch and see how that shakes down. I mean, I think the thing that at Georgia, and this is people say, I don't understand how all these highly ranked guys can go to Georgia and have all the depth they've got to fight. Well, the thing that's a fact is Kirby has shown you his strategy is he's going to play a lot of guys at every position. Yeah. I think you and I talked about this a couple of shows ago. I mean, which position on offense do you not expect the backup to get a lot of reps? all season long. There's one position on offense. What is that? Quarterback, right? Everywhere else on offense, you're going to have a rotation of guys, and they're all going to get a lot of reps. Quarterback is the only place where you won't see the backup get meaningful reps early in the season because Carson Beck's going to get all the meaningful reps. Everywhere else, we haven't even talked about running backs yet. We're going to talk about them in a minute, I believe. But O-line, you're going to see 7, 8, 9 guys rotating and playing a lot early, not just for experience for them, but you want to keep your guys winded, from getting winded. You want to keep them fresh. You want to make sure they're healthy at the end of the season. So rotation is huge. So if you're a highly, rated guy, if you're a very good football player and you come to Georgia, just because there's an All-American in front of you, you're still going to play. You're going to play a lot. And if you do your time, you're going to be a starter as an All-American in 2 years. That's just the way Kirby's done it. And I don't think he gets
look at the Amarius Mims plan.
What's that?
Look at the Amarius Mims plan.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, so O-line's going to be interesting. I mean, what's your take, Roddy? Because you've seen a lot more practice than I have, and I know y'all get limited minutes of watching them. But I mean, tell us about the running back situation right now, because you see some of the pictures of them, but all I've heard is ETN is a different back than Georgia's had probably since DeAndre Swift.
I mean, you went through that series of backs where you just had, an NFL guy. So you go from Gurley to Chubb to Swift to Sony, to Sony to Swift, and you had James Cook, who's really good. You had Holyfield, then Kenny and Kenny McIntosh and Kendall Milton. Those guys were good. Zeus could be the guy, but Zeus didn't really take over games. James Cook didn't take over games. You were kind of expecting them to, and they're obviously good enough because they're starting in the NFL.
Right. Unbelievable football players.
These are unbelievable. But there was the times where you knew, hey, if we just get the ball to Sony, we got it. Give it a try. It's those home run balls, if you will. And it just frustrated me because Kenny got beat up a little bit, and Kendall Milton it drove me crazy how many times he got hurt. Again, not his fault. So it's been a while since you've had that kind of, hey, what is the offense? Well, the offense goes through the running back.
Yep.
And it hasn't been that way. Even when you had some good guys, the offense went through the QB. But right now, I like what you have in Trevor Etienne. You could be getting back to that. Here's a home run threat. Like, okay, well, we don't know. I mean, he wasn't even starting Florida, but he was one of Florida's best.
He was their best back.
He was their best back, but he wasn't starter. Now all of a sudden it's like, okay, we got him. So now maybe you got that kind of, and he's small compared to the other guys. So hey, I'm like, that doesn't matter. DeAndre Swift wasn't the biggest guy. So you got a DeAndre Swift, but you still need that kind of between the tackles guy. You look at Roderick Robinson, 0.
He's a monster.
Jeez. I'm like, okay, so you got 2. Hey, you got that thunder and lightning. That's exactly what you need. All of a sudden, Branson Robinson's back. The guy that scored 2 touchdowns in the national championship game. The guy that deadlifts, 600-700 pounds. He's back. Now you got to take it slow with him, but that's impressive. Then all of a sudden you get some. Of course, you got Cash Jones out there, who's
right. He'll get reps for you.
He can do it. Yet we saw Chauncey Bowen in the spring. It's like, okay, this is pretty good. Dwight Phillips comes in. This is a guy with world-class track speed. You're like, wait, you got another burner. But then there's a kid, number 3, Nate Frazier. And I'm telling you, if you've got those Todd Gurley jerseys out there, get them out of the closet, dust them off. I know it's been, I put up a picture the other day, it was 11 years ago. It was Todd Gurley making some crazy catch in practice. Like, it's been a minute since you needed that number 3 out there, but you need to have that number 3 jersey. And it's going to be tough for a true freshman to get out there. I mean, Rod Robinson, he can catch now. You can throw to him. Branson Robinson is dangerous. Trevor Etienne, you could have a 1,000-yard rusher, but it's going to be just like, remember Sony Michel's first game, I think they faced off South Carolina or somebody like that. He goes down on a punt, and the guy catches the ball, and Sony just drops it. You're like, wait, who's number 1?
Mm-hmm.
He's a true freshman. You weren't, you're still trying to figure out the numbers. But he made a huge play as a gunner. If you start seeing number 3 making plays, he might not be the man this year, but you're going to see those flashes that we saw early on with Nick Chubb running out of his shoe, and Sony Michel making a huge play like that. James Cook catching one and taking it to the house. Like, wait, he's number 4. So those guys could do it. And we had some notes from practice. One person said that Trevor Etienne faked out Daniel Harris badly on a swing pass, causing Kirby Smart to comment, "Better to get embarrassed in practice than in the game." Trevor Etienne, Daniel Harris, the starter versus starter. That's very interesting. So
Kirby on the mic is very interesting, by the way. I mean, there is all the butt kissing that goes on during recruiting, like it all equals out on the practice field. Like the egos better be checked, and you better perform well. Yeah, I mean, Etienne, I think, is the undisputed number one guy for Georgia. And obviously his status for the first game of the season is in question a little bit. Hopefully he's there. Maybe they're getting it worked out. I'm not sure, but I hope we see him. And we had this conversation, me and some buddies the other day, about who's the next running back for Georgia? Who's the number two? And I don't think you'll see Georgia have a 1,000-yard rusher just because they have to spread the ball around so much. So there's only so many snaps in a game. And we hadn't even started talking about receivers and tight ends yet. And there's just so much talent that you want to get the ball to. So I don't think you'll see a Georgia with a 1,000-yard rusher. Etienne, I think, is clearly the number one guy. For anybody that's watched practice, he stands out as a different dude when it comes to how he runs the ball, the way he moves, the way he catches, all that stuff. The other guy, and you just talked about him pretty well, is the Frazier kid. I mean, he is going to be potentially the next starter at Georgia in all like after Etienne. He moves like you want those. He's explosive. He's quick. He cuts. He's strong. He's powerful. I think the number two guy this year, as far as number of carries, will be Rod Robinson, just purely because of style of running on it. He and Branson Robinson, as far as we know, are similar style. And you just can't pencil Branson Robinson in yet as a guy that gets a ton of reps, just coming off of a knee injury. Not a knock on the kid, but we all know that first year back from an ACL is tough. Like, he's running, he's moving, but you typically take a year and a half, 2 years, have that bounce back and really be there. But, so I would say Etienne is your guy to start with Rod Robinson being that bruiser up the middle, kind of make the other team not want to play football anymore type guy. But you're going to see this Frazier kid, and you're going to see him a good bit really early. It's hard for a true freshman to play a ton, except for a running back and receiver. They can't play every snap because they don't know all the ins and outs of it. But you put in some plays, hey, man, run sweep over there and see what you can do. Hey, go out and run a little angle route and get open. And you're going to see that guy. He's too special not to get the ball. So, it's Georgia has an embarrassment of riches at just about every position on the field, and running back is no exception.
Well, you were there. Okay, you're about to run inside zone. Who are you giving the ball to?
Rod Robinson.
That's my point. And I'm going to the left side of the. I'm going to the left.
Yeah.
I'm going. Hey, Ernest Reed, Michael Morris. Jared Wilson, Orte Ratledge. I'm like,
yeah,
3rd and 2. I don't know if you're running zone there or not, but I'm just saying, hey, give me that guy who could squeeze through there. That's
yeah. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, it's going to be really interesting. Tight end. You've got a lot of bodies there. Who's going to be your guy? Who's going to be you're not going to have another Brock Bowers. Like Brock Bowers, let's
not my lifetime.
He's the greatest tight end in the history of college football. Okay, people want to argue it. That's fine. Argue it all you want to. If I had to look back at any tight end in the history of college football that I would take, he's my first pick. He's just so versatile and so good. And he did not get enough credit for how physical of a blocker he was either. So he did it all for you. So, in the little bit of practice I was at the other day, I heard Kirby getting on Oscar Delp about something, saying, kind of sarcastically, come on now, you better get it up. You next Brock Bowers, whatever. I don't think he said that, but he was riding him a little bit. So you got high expectation on Oscar Delp. Lawson Lucky, kind of a guy that, back to the Olympic stuff, all those gymnastics girls been talking about redemption tour. I feel like for Lawson Lucky, this is a little bit of a redemption year for him, coming off some injuries last year and some of that stuff. So I think he's the guy that you want to go. And then, I think it's in the notes in the dog vent today. Ben Urasek, the Stanford tight end, is already getting a lot of run. And sometimes different players just kind of click with the quarterback. And some of the early reports are that Carson Beck loves the Urasek kid, the Stanford transfer. So, you got 3 or 4 guys there that you think are going to turn into something really nice for you. And then when you look at the wide receiver position, Colby Young, there's always a guy in camp that, like, you look at physically and he's going to be the next guy. It doesn't always shake out like that. There's always a linebacker that somebody saw do a windmill 360 dunk at the Ramsey Center. Yeah. There's always a defensive lineman that could jump over a car standing still. And you don't always see it translate. But Colby Young looks great. So, He's kind of that hybrid guy. He's a big receiver that gets a little bit tight and runs from a body standpoint, but you just got so much talent. Like, I don't know how they're going to spread the ball around this year.
Yeah, the note that we had on Ben Urisic was, and again, this is just somebody's opinion. They were at practice and they kind of saw it. And we're not giving anything away here, but this is just, some people's takes. And, a lot of them got to go. The Classic City Collective had basically a private practice. So if you were a member of the Classic City Collective, you could go watch practice. And we had a bunch of people come to our board. And, they weren't going to give away formations and stuff like that. They're not trying to sink the football team for any internet clout. But they gave their thoughts and opinions. And we had somebody at practice yesterday or the day before and said, hey, Ben Urisic, this kid. And, of course, we got to see him. And he's thicker than we expected. So he's either put on muscle or is more muscular than we thought. But they said, yeah, this guy looks like Carson Beck's main target because he threw a ton of balls to him. But here's the funny part. So on one play, Malachi Starks came up to tackle Urisic, and Urisic threw him to the ground. Smart got on the mic and said jokingly, don't do that to Starks. And you've seen it where your quarterbacks and your running backs are thudded, but you guys get to pop those defensive guys. You get to hit them. Well, so every once in a while, you got a defensive guy who's a pretty good stud. And they're like, hey, back it down a little bit.
Get a little bit of that, yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I think that Carson Beck, he's the right guy for this offense. And I don't just say the red and black colored glasses. I mean, football at all levels, specifically college football, has turned more and more to where you got two options if you want to be a really good quarterback. Either you better be very mobile and able to make plays with your feet, able to improvise, find an open guy, make something out of nothing when it breaks down, or you better be an elite distributor of the football. And you're talking about the guys in quick decisions and a good arm. You're talking about, in that situation right now, the NFL guys. You're talking about the Justin Herberts, the Joe Burrows, the Aaron Rodgers, those types of guys that are going to be absolute studs. Now, Patrick Mahomes is a different deal because he can do them both. So you either got to be able to run, you got to have the Lamar Jackson in you, the Josh Allen in you, some of those guys that are big, mobile, scrambling type guys, or you got to be able to stand in the pocket, find your targets, get the ball out quickly with the right decision. And Carson Beck is obviously that guy. And with as much talent as there is around him, the offensive line should give him time this year. He should be able to stand in the pocket. And you got so many weapons you can get the ball to. You don't have to have a quarterback that's trying to win the Heisman on the first drive of the first game. You got to have a guy that goes back 1, 2, 3. There's my tight end. Boom. 1, 2, 3. There's Kobe Young. Boom. 1, 2, 3. Here's ETN. Give it to him. You got to make quick decisions, get the ball to the right guy at the right time. And I feel like Carson Beck he's obviously the guy for Georgia. It's not close. It's not a quarterback competition in any shape, form, or fashion. But his skill set seems to match up really well for how this specific team is built.
No, you're right. And that's a situation where when he goes up there, he's got the 5 in front of him that are going to give him time. And Georgia, it takes a lot of pressure off of him if you have a strong run game. Like, okay, well, now cooking with heat. Everything else from here is gravy. The way the RPO game is developed, he's great for that. He did set the single season completion percentage record by making good decisions, making them fast. He goes up. He has the same thing that Stetson Bennett did. You walk up, see the formation. You know what is supposed to be open. You see their formation. Now, of course, the defense is trying to hide their coverages and such. But you're like, okay, well, even if they rotate to X, here's my, he's able to do the math, be able to dot it out. The little chess pieces moving around in front of his eyes, a little GIF. All of a sudden, he's like, okay, I'm going to Dylan Bell here because Dylan's running an out route, and with that safety coming in to pick up, he's going to have inside leverage. So I got it. I'm going to throw the ball over there, and he does it. And so if you have Carson Beck standing behind those 5 guys with a good running back behind him, either running 12 personnel or just 11, and you're like, okay, we've got Dylan Bell, Dominic Lovett, Arian Smith, and Oscar Delp.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's That's tough. And that's not getting into Sokovie White, true freshman, looks good out there. Evans, one of the fastest guys out there. Evans could take it off. And I want to go back real quick, talking about not having a 1,000-yard rusher. Georgia was also distributing the ball a lot when they had other guys, but sometimes one of those guys just breaks off too many big runs not to hit 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
But
yeah, we'll take it.
I doubt we see a 1,000-yard receiver with this many guys get the ball out to. Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, obviously, we as Georgia fans, and there's not many people watching our show that aren't Georgia fans. If they are, they're degenerate college football fans, and you're welcome, by the way, to be here. But I think the challenge for Georgia now, when you look at on the negative side a little bit from Carson Beck's standpoint, like, tell me the last pocket passing quarterback that won a national championship in college football. I mean, I don't know that answer, right? I mean, last year, Michigan won it. They had J.J. McCarthy. J.J. McCarthy is not a traditional drop back passer. Like, he was a running threat. You look at Georgia, the 2 years they won it before that. Probably the best improvisational quarterback that Georgia's ever seen is Stetson Bennett. He was the guy that did it. So, I mean, you keep going before that, Bama with Tua. You think about some of those things. I'd literally have to look at the list because I can't think of it. I mean, that's gonna be the thing that Carson Beck has got to do that hasn't happened in recent history of college football. Joe Burrow, there you go. That's the last one. For LSU in all likelihood. But Joe Burrow is one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the world right now, and he had unbelievable weapons when he was at LSU. So the question is, I'm not saying Carson Beck can't do it, but that's the question. Can he play at that level? Carson Beck has to play almost at a Heisman level to win from the pocket. You got to have a lot of yards. You got to throw the ball all over the place. You got to hit dots. You got to make great decisions. You can't screw it up because your margin of error, if you're standing in the pocket, goes way down. Stetson Bennett could screw it up. Next thing you know, he could do a cartwheel, a backflip, wave at his girlfriend in the stands, and go 80 yards for a touchdown. Like, that's the stuff Stetson would do that you couldn't plan for. People can plan for Carson Beck. The question is he good enough to beat the plan?
Very true. I mean, I'm sure that when Travaris Robinson came over to Georgia from Alabama, they put him up on the whiteboard and said, okay, when you were watching us last year, when you were planning a game plan for us, when you were calling your defense to slow us down or to stop us, what'd you see? Mm-hmm. So let's fix those issues right off the bat, because the only one team beat Georgia last year, and he was the guy calling the defense and did it. So now he's the Georgia coach in your safeties. So you've got that. Talk about self-scouting, and did you see any weaknesses in Carson's game? And T-Rob said, "Hey, I give Carson Beck grief all practice long. He talks smack to Carson the whole time because that's his secondary, and the offense and the defense chirping each other, and he's very good-natured." And the T-Rob interview, if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, you need to go see it. Check out our pages here. The T-Rob interviews, that's 15 minutes of your time well spent. He's an absolute riot. He told a lot of great stories. It's definitely worth it. And to get his thoughts on the defense and his philosophy, it's very impressive. I'm with you, though. I felt better when Stetson Bennett was doing his crazy stuff because you knew behind him you had Carson Beck.
Yep.
Okay, tuck it and run and make it dangerous. Also, if a guy's not going to keep it, he's faking it up inside. He's, bootlegging out, and he never keeps the ball. He's not a threat. That outside guy, is crashing in, catching him from behind. The backside guys making tackle after tackle. And you're like, look, you got to keep it once just to keep him honest. Now it's like, okay, well, you got Jaden Rashada. He looks pretty good. You got Gunnar Stockton. He looks really good. And Ryan Puglisi is your quarterback of the future. We talk about, you're going to be in those tight games. You're not going to be able to get those guys a ton of reps. You're going to give them to Carson. But Carson is one, play away from you having – heck, we go back to Jacob Eason. 8 plays. Right. 8 plays in the season. Boom, he's down. JT Daniels, that's what launched the birth of Stetson Bennett. So quarterbacks in the SEC get hurt all the time. I'm with you. He should have time in the pocket. He should be able to pick teams apart. But every once in a while, if that's coming, the defense can make it tough. So, again, I'm not trying to say it's all – I'm not looking through rose-colored glasses. I'm just saying it's a long season. I'm with you. A pocket passer can win a title. It's been a minute, and he had a bunch of first-round guys around him. So
Yeah. Well,
let's have a plan B.
And I think George. We talked about the D line as kind of the one area that I'm not gonna call it a weakness, but kind of the unknown right now. You got some stuff. Who's your tight end going to be? We talked about it a little bit. So you got some areas of concern. But if you're Georgia, and I would bet money, Kirby and I have not had a closed door conversation. Kirby has not called me in and told me what he thinks. But I would guarantee you, if he stays up at night, and I don't think Kirby stays up at night. I think Kirby works until it's time to sleep, and then he goes immediately to sleep, and then wakes up and starts working again. I think that's the way he's wired. But if there was something that made him lose sleep, I would bet you this year it's the backup quarterback situation because of just what you said. I mean, who is the guy right now that you feel good about putting in the game if you're Georgia? And there's really not a guy because of a lack of experience with it. I would guess it's Gunnar Stockton right now just because he is more experienced as far as having some snaps and been in the program a little bit longer. But there's questions around Gunnar about, from how he throws the ball, what he's going to do. Like, he just doesn't have the experience yet. And then obviously, if Puglisi is your quarterback this year, it ain't good because he's a true freshman. The teams don't win with true freshman quarterbacks. And then Jaden Rashad's a little bit the same way. Jaden Rashad is a big, good-looking athlete that can throw the absolute hellfire out of the ball. But that doesn't mean he knows the offense, knows the reads, and knows how to be accurate with football yet. So, the biggest weakness Georgia has right now is going to be the depth of the quarterback going into the season. If Carson Beck goes down, the chance of Georgia winning another national championship drop faster than any other position on the field, and it's not even close.
Very true. I do like that Gunnar gives you another option. I would like, and again, you just don't see this, and we'll ask Mike Bobo about it tomorrow, but I liked back in the day when you actually had packages for a quarterback to come in. It's like, okay, we got the David Green stuff. Hey, this drive is going to be a DJ Shockley drive. He's coming in because you don't know what he's going to do. Yep. Now, he is a pocket quarterback. He's not just going to go out there and run it, but you're not certain. Yep. So you got to be a little more honest. And, hey, he might run the exact same plays that Greedy did, but he also might just screw with you a little bit. And I like sometimes just giving it to him to keep them guessing. If anything, it makes the team in week 2 prep for 2 different quarterbacks. And I just love doing that. But I know you don't want to give up one of your drives. I understand. And people go, well, why don't we just do that? I'm like, you don't understand how these coaches – it's almost like if you and me were splitting a key lime pie. You cut a slice, then I cut a slice.
Right.
You cut another slice, I got to have my slice. I want to make sure my slice is bigger, more productive than yours, and vice versa. We're trying to get as much. It's the same way with drives. They half the time they're not even looking score wise. They're just and all the stuff that we're looking at. Who got the ball? They're looking at my drive, your drive, my drive, your drive. That's why they freak out so much over the turnovers. You cut one of my drives short, and you got an extra one. So they think in drives, possessions. Mm-hmm. And if you can't have an ineffective possession because now all of a sudden you've hurt the next 2 or 3. So we're like, just put in a package for your backup quarterback so that he can get some experience.
It don't work like that.
It does not.
It simply don't work like that. But you hope that. Clemson ain't gonna be a cakewalk. I don't think anybody thinks it's gonna be a cakewalk. Georgia's expected to win. I'm gonna say we're probably double-digit favorites, but it's not a cakewalk for a game. You hope that some of those early, because who we got, like Tennessee State or somebody's second game. Somebody, I don't even remember off of this. Those games don't register for me. But you hope that you get some opportunity early on to get your backup guys meaningful snaps. So that even if Carson just rolls his ankle, if he gets the wind knocked out of him, has to come out for a second, has to get her contact replaced, who knows what? But you've got somebody you feel good about putting in. So, I want to see that through camp. I want to see that early on in the season. I want to feel better about that position. And then after that, if a defense line monster steps up, Georgia's going to be trouble. I think Georgia's going to be trouble anyway. They're just too good not to be. But, it's I'm glad we're actually talking about actual football now and not just covering all the off-season news, which is hit or miss as far as if it's good or not. So,
well, that's we've been talking about it for an hour, so we're going to let the folks go back to what they're doing. Go watch the Olympics, folks. If somebody knows what happened with Noah Lyles in the
Don't tell us.
Yeah, don't tell us. I got to go find that. Next Wednesday, 8 o'clock, we'll be back here. Hopefully we'll be able to tell you a little bit more. Now, there's not going to be a scrimmage this Saturday. It's too early. The scrimmage will be the following Saturday, but we'll definitely have a lot more practices. Tomorrow we get to speak to Todd Hartley and Mike Bobo. We'll have some questions for them. So we'll be recapping some of their stuff. Next Tuesday, hopefully we'll get another chance to watch practice or watch at least part of it. So as Wednesday rolls around, ideally we will talk more Georgia football. And again, that'll be 2 weeks in the camp, and it'll be 2 weeks in the season. So should be pretty interesting stuff. Even if I am on here and I got to lob softballs to Russ to just knock out of the park. So you can have a better host, but you can't get better information and better analysis than we have with Russ Tanner on the show.
So. Appreciate it. Thank you, Roddy.
All right. You folks take care. We'll talk to you later.
Go Dogs.